I'm Scott Malevsky, and this is Interviews with Me.
Oh, Maine, your rivers, your back roads claim me.
This week, Amanda Hill.
Here it genuinely is family. Yep. And that sounds weird to say, but these are my people. And you respect the people who are here.
Because everyone has a story.
Welcome home to Maine.
You're hard to find information on. I'll
really?
Tell you. You and Rob both were very hard to find info on.
We're sneaky like that.
I try to do a little bit of research. I don't try to do a huge amount because I want this to be a natural conversation. My next guest was born and raised in Maine. What part of Maine?
Turner.
Okay.
Right outside of Lewiston, Auburn.
Exactly, yes. Okay.
Like you saying you're from Strong, you have to say the next town over.
The next town over.
No one knows where it is.
Exactly, yes. After graduating high school, she attended Lyndon State College in Vermont, majoring in television studies. Mm-hmm. She joined WCSH NewsCenter right out of college and has been there ever since.
Yeah.
Her most current role being that of co-host on the popular evening show 207, which is celebrating its 16th year.
I think you meant to say super popular.
Super popular. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Super popular evening show. Please welcome Amanda Hill.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you, Amanda, for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Don't mind me. I'll look over every now and then just to make sure the sound levels are
sure.
good.
Of course. You do what you got to do.
So you grew up in Turner.
Yes.
Tell me about Turner.
Turner is...
the only thing most people know about Turner who are either from Maine or not from Maine is DeCosters.
Right.
So tell me about Turner. What more is there to Turner than DeCosters?
Well, that's about it. No, there's a lot of farms, dairy farms, a lot of apple orchards.
Yep.
Turner is beautiful. I have people all the time who say, "Oh, I drove through your town today."
Through your town, yes.
Through the town. And I'm like, no. Route 4 on your way to Sugarloaf does not count. Because there's so much more to Turner. It's a cute little town. It's one of those towns where I think you can appreciate this, where everyone knows everyone. And that's good and bad because everybody knows your business. And everyone talks about your business. But everyone there, would give you the shirt off their back. It's a great place to grow up.
Tell me about your parents. Are your parents still alive?
They are. They are. And they're still in Turner. My dad grew up in Turner, just down the road. My mom grew up in Lewiston. Her parents were, the French-Canadian. Their family immigrated years back. They worked in the mills. They were full-on Lewiston, Franco-American. I have the mix of that and just, the old school Turner. Yeah, but my parents are both around and my mom's about to retire. So they're excited.
Now, what do you remember the most about your mom? When you were a kid, what sticks out?
That's a good question. I know her family tried really hard to sort of break away from the Franco-American thing, just because there was such a stigma around being an immigrant. She sort of grew up with this weird accent of part French, part American, and she just, she always got made fun of for that. And
Augusta has a very French population as well.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, and it's hard, because she got made fun of for that. She was a very loving mother, still is, obviously. I still go to her for all sorts of questions, and she seems to always have the answers, which is nice.
Yeah. Now, what about your dad?
A lot growing up would have people say, "Oh, you're Alan Hill's daughter, aren't you?" Just because, again, in that small town, everyone knew the Hills. Yep. They knew my grandfather. They knew my dad. Now it's turned around on him. He actually had somebody the other day say, "You're great. Amanda Hill's dad, aren't you?"
That's funny.
So I was like, take that.
That's the thing about a small town is that your reputation as a child could go either way, depending on your parents. So if your parents are like the black sheep of the town, you're that Amanda Hill.
Oh, yeah.
You're that Scott, yes.
Your parents can make or break you, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Luckily, they were good.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a sister who is 2 years older. Mm-hmm. She actually works right across the street from me at the Museum of Art.
Oh, nice.
And I never see her.
You need to get together for lunch.
Yeah, we should.
So just one sister?
Just one sister.
Okay. Were you close growing up? Or did you fight like most sisters?
We fought like most sisters. It's that whole, you're too close in age thing. There's always competition, and we were very different. We still are very different.
Yep.
Yeah, we've gotten closer as we've gotten older.
I see that in my daughters now.
It's hard. Sisters are hard.
As a man with 3 daughters, I see girls in general as being more difficult, but that's just me.
Well, listen, when I got a dog, they said don't get 2 female dogs because there's something about females growing up in the same house. It's complicated.
Wow.
So I'm sorry.
I'll remember that with dogs. No. Did you have a lot of relatives around you growing up?
Yeah, I mean, my family for the most part lived in Lewiston or in Turner, sort of around the area.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite relatives? That's a very knowing laugh right there.
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that. I think someone's going to be upset.
Someone will be
do.
offended of the. Okay, well, moving on.
Next.
Describe a perfect day when you were a kid.
A perfect day as a kid. You know, it's funny. I was just talking about this the other day. You know, ticks are such a big thing now, but I grew up, you know, in the woods in Turner. When you grow up in a small town in Maine, it's trees everywhere. Yep. And my favorite thing was to explore the woods. I spent a lot of time out there, and we had swamps in the area, and, you know, I would just hang out. My sister would be like, I don't want to hang out with you. So I'd go hang out in the woods.
Yep.
But yeah, you never worried about that stuff. Now it's so different.
I just thought about that the other day with, you know, the tick population and everything, and I just never worried about it growing up.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's, you know, the imagination of a kid is so fascinating. Like, you could create your own world out there. I mean, I guess there are other worlds outside of the woods.
That's good that you were outdoors, so you must have a better appreciation of the outdoors now.
I do. Yeah. In my job, I am lucky to be able to travel all over the state. Yeah, Maine is really, really cool. Maine's beautiful. We're lucky.
Who were your heroes growing up?
I looked up to my parents a lot. My dad was the kind of guy who, you know, what you see is what you get with him. And I always appreciated his honesty and his openness. You know, he was also the kind of guy who didn't really speak unless he had something important to say.
Right.
Which
is rare these days.
It is. As weird as it is to say being on television and talking for a living, I try to keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. I love telling the stories of other people, but talking about myself is weird, and I don't think it's necessary all the time. So I like to keep that in mind of speak when something is worth talking about.
What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned from your dad? Is it that, only speaking when you have something important to say?
I think that in part, and I think a lot of it, you know, he was the kind of guy, if he drove down the road and saw somebody pulled over with a flat tire, he would stop no matter what. He would stop and help them. And he got that from my grandfather. I know that. I like to think that he passed that down to me. And I mean, it's hard this day and age, you know, it's hard to trust people, and it's hard to really think about other people when you're so consumed in your own life. Living in Maine, we still have enough of that it's okay to do that.
And what about your mom? What are the most important things you've learned from your mom?
My mom is very outgoing and very friendly. So I think I learned from her to come out of my shell a little bit more and trust who you are as a person. And, you know, I mentioned she got teased a lot for a lot of different things when she grew up, and she just owned who she was. Yeah. I'll take that with me.
What was the worst thing you did growing up?
The worst thing I did growing up. You know what? Maybe I blocked out a lot of things. I feel like I was a pretty good kid for the most part. I didn't, you know, I never got arrested. I did crash my dad's truck. And that was probably the most terrifying thing I did, because his truck was like his baby. Yeah. It was his third child. He took care of it. He rarely drove it because he didn't want to get it dirty or mess it up. I had to use it one day. Yeah, I crashed it. It was like bad. It was...
Did you total it?
I totaled it.
You and I have that in common.
I think a lot of kids have that story. It's bad. It's bad. But the cop picked me up, brought me home, and Dad wasn't home. He was like at the church with a saw cutting down trees. And
which makes it even worse.
Yeah.
He's not there.
Right. So we pulled into the church in the cop car, and there he is holding a chainsaw just looking at me. And I was like, can we just go back? Let's not stop here. Oh. He was very good about it. It was not a great day.
Were you a good student in school?
I would say I was an average student. I definitely cared about grades,
Yep.
but I also, it wasn't all about school work for me. I played field hockey. I did a lot of after school stuff.
Yep.
But I would say, I wasn't a troublemaker. I was a little bit of a class clown. Yeah, I would say I was pretty average in school.
And you were obviously athletic because you did a couple different sports. Did you know going out of high school that you wanted to go into television? That was what you wanted to do?
I didn't. Here's your random fun fact of the day. My entire life until senior year in high school, wanted to go into zoology. I had like a little zookeeper outfit from Busch Gardens that I wore like every day when I was a kid. I had those huge plastic keys that I would hook to my belt. I wanted to be a zookeeper for life. And then I realized how much science goes into it. And that was my worst subject in school.
Oh, man.
And so my high school actually at the time started up this newspaper, which they didn't have before.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, well, that'll be like an easy elective to take. I'll just do that.
Sure.
And I realized how much I enjoyed writing. I always liked English, but I really enjoyed writing and telling stories. And I was like, maybe this is what I want to do. And then I found Linden State.
Yep.
And it was one of those schools that completely threw you in. It was a sink or swim, live broadcast run by students. Freshman year, you have a camera, go out into the community, cover those car accidents, cover the fires, cover the town council meetings. And
how does the town like that? I think about if there were a college in Strong, how would we feel about people walking around with video cameras just filming everything?
They're pretty used to it by now. And it wasn't just in Lyndonville, Vermont. It was, which is the best name for a town. Yeah. It was the surrounding communities. And they actually liked it because their closest actual news was based in Burlington, which was like an hour and 45 minutes away. So they didn't often have news cameras covering their local news. I think at the time we had like 9,000 homes watching us, which is a lot in Vermont.
Wow, that's a lot for a small community.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
What do you like best? Do you like being behind the camera? Do you like being in front of the camera? Do you like writing?
I like all of it. And in college, I actually double majored to do behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I think I'm less great at the photography thing. I think it's better to work with a photographer, which is nice on 207. I get a photographer. I didn't before in news, but I just think when you have somebody who has a real eye for capturing video and capturing the moment, it makes the story that much easier to tell on my side of things. And it gives you a little bit more leeway to be able to pay more attention to what's happening and actually tell the story right. So I don't know. I like both. I think I'm better at one other than the other.
So moving more into college, what were your favorite classes that you took? Were there any classes that you took that you weren't expecting to like?
My mom made fun of me so much because we had to take a lot of television classes. And our classes were basically going to work. Like you would go into your newsroom, you would find a story for the day, and you would essentially put that together. Yeah, it was really cool. But it was like a job that we would show up to every day. And then, of course, we had, science here and English here and whatever. But I took electives like kayaking class and scuba diving class.
Scuba diving would be fun.
Yeah, my mom was like, what are you doing?
What are we paying for?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I paid for it eventually, but scuba diving I took because I am terrified of the water.
So this was like a face your fear type
It was. So I'm a certified scuba diver now.
So you have your PADI certification.
I do.
Very nice.
I do.
I'm impressed.
Hey, thanks. Don't be too impressed because I don't really dive that often.
Well, there's not many people up here who do that because it's so cold.
Yeah, my open water dive was in Vermont in May. That's fun schooling.
Yeah. It would be more fun if it were in the Caribbean, but yeah.
Right, exactly.
You get to the end of college, you're graduating. Did you know you always wanted to move back to Maine? How did that come about?
I actually had no interest in staying in Maine. I mean, I love Maine. Obviously, I'm here and I'm planning on staying here. At the time, you know, when you're 22 years old, getting out of college, you want to go travel. You want to go experience things. And I applied everywhere. The one place that called me back, the first place that called me back was this place. They were looking for a weekend morning show producer. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, well, I'll produce for a little while, get my foot in the door in the business, and then keep applying to other places.
Move on.
Yeah, exactly. So I started here as the producer for the weekend morning show, which means...
Yeah, I was going to say, what exactly does producer mean?
So I came in at midnight and basically put together our rundown. So you pull in stories from the night before, you pull in stories from NBC. You basically set up the show, and then you write the show and all the teases and make sure everything's good to go. And at the time, my anchor was Brian Yukono, who also went to Levitt in Turner.
Oh, no kidding.
So I knew him from there, but he would come in at like 4 a.m. to get ready for the show. And every time he came in, I'd be passed out in my chair, just dead asleep. And he would be like, okay, come on, let's get back to work. It's a wonder the show even got on air. Yeah, but we had fun. And then from there, things kept opening up, and we had lost our very first, what we call multimedia journalist. So somebody who shoots and edits and writes all of their own stuff, left to go to Bangor, our Bangor station. So I applied for that job. I was like, hey, I did all of this at Linden State. I can do it here. And they weren't really sure about the new kid, but they gave me a shot. I'm very thankful for that, because then things just progressed from there. And then I MMJ'd, and then I became an anchor, and things just kept coming up. So my idea to move on to something else, bigger and better, just kept happening here. And then I think I got to a point where I was like, Maine is just a great place to tell stories. Why would I want to leave?
Moving on into more of your current life, what do you do in your spare time? Do you have a lot of spare time?
Not really. My hours are kind of funky here.
Well, before they were midnight to whatever, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, we also have a lot of people here who, as you know, have been here for a really long time. And,
you know, Rob and I were talking about that, Pat Callahan, Don Kerrigan, Bill Green, has been here 40 years. And, this is one of those stations that seems to be, the longevity is here. The camaraderie is here. The corporation treats you well. You just don't seem to see that at other stations or other broadcasts.
I can't really speak on other stations because this is the one place I've been, but based on what I've heard from other people, it is not like this anywhere else. Right. It's very much someone wants your job and someone's gunning for that job. Here, it genuinely is family. Yep. And that sounds weird to say, but these are my people. Yep. And you respect the people who are here. You ask them questions about your stories. They ask you questions about their stories. You talk about your own personal lives. And it really is a family here. And that's why I think so many people have stayed. Plus, Maine is such a great place. It's hard to walk away from that. I mean, even at other stations, they have people who have been there for years, too. With that, we have all these legends who've been here, but they all have so much vacation time built up that I am filling in a lot. I work a lot, I would say, here.
Okay. So no spare time?
No spare time. No spare time. Okay. I do like to hang out with my dog, Jackson. Other than that, I don't really have a ton of spare time.
Not a lot of time for reading?
No, although I do try to read here and there.
Work or pleasure?
Pleasure. But I like to read nonfiction.
What kind of nonfiction?
Like I just finished...
I love biographies, but which is one of the reasons I do this podcast. But
I just finished a book called A Tale of the Dueling Neurosurgeons. Sounds kind of nerdy, but and it kind of is. But it's about sort of how the human brain works and studies they've done based on different trauma that has happened over history. So, like Phineas Gage would be a great example. Had that pipe go through his brain and it sort of changed his personality. And so they were, it's just, to me, that was fascinating to learn how the brain works.
It all affects.
Yeah.
So who do you admire?
I'm pausing because it's going to sound really lame.
There's no such thing as a lame answer.
I actually really, really admire my co-host, Rob Caldwell. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first started here, I had my job interview and his desk was sort of right outside the news director's office. She had said, "What station did you grow up watching? Because you're from Maine." Yeah. And I said, "I don't think you understand. I'm freaking out about the fact that Rob Caldwell is sitting right there." I mean, I think everyone here is so talented in many different ways, but watching Rob Caldwell interview somebody is fascinating to me. He's just, you can tell he genuinely is into the interview. Yes. He's interested. He does his research and he genuinely cares about what he's talking about.
Yeah, he was a little bit uncomfortable on the other side of the microphone, but he did very well. He was good.
He is, and I think it's safe to say all of us would be. It's a weird thing when you spend your career doing this, interviewing someone and asking them questions. It's weird to be on the other side.
Tables,
yeah.
Of all the people that you met, is there somebody that you haven't met yet?
Yeah, Stephen King would be great.
You know, Rob said the same thing. Said the exact same answer.
Hint, hint.
That's funny. What is your most embarrassing moment?
On television?
In general. In life.
I don't know. I have a lot of embarrassing. I mean, I think embarrassing things just happen.
So I actually, I posted, online. I said, does anybody have any questions for Rob and Amanda? And somebody actually sent one in. And they said they wanted to know what was the wackiest segment you've ever done on 207.
Ooh, I don't know if it's the wackiest, but it stands out to me still, is we had a woman who eats bugs because they are a good source of protein. Yeah. And she came in, and so she sort of showed us how to cook with bugs. She brought in a tarantula.
And she ate it?
We ate it. And I am terrified of spiders. Absolutely terrified.
How did you get through that?
I was literally sweating. And I was shaking.
Wow.
And I could only eat the leg. I couldn't eat the torso. Thankfully, it was not squishy in any way.
Was it crunchy?
It was very crunchy.
Oh, wow.
And very salty. It was roasted. I don't know that they added any seasoning or if they just roasted it, but it was weird. She tried to hand me the spider itself, and I was like, no. If you can break off a piece and I can't tell it's a spider, then I'll try it. Yeah, that was probably one of the weirdest / most difficult segments we've done.
I think a lot of barbecue sauce would probably be needed for me.
It didn't taste bad. It just, it's hard.
Just the idea of,
Yeah, just seeing it was freaky.
So back to the embarrassing moment. Can you pick one embarrassing moment?
That was pretty embarrassing because I was literally sweating. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are, listen, I'm sure viewers could tell you a ton of embarrassing moments for me. It's hard to think of that right now.
Who inspires you?
Again, this is going to sound lame, but this newsroom, especially when you have moments of breaking news and really, really difficult stories.
Sure.
Like recently we covered the death of Captain Joel Barnes with the Berwick Fire Department. That's a tough one because I have a lot of friends in the fire service. Yeah. So I kind of have an understanding of what they do and putting themselves out there. That was a tough story for all of us, especially when someone dies in such a meaningful way. Right. And to tell the story of somebody like that, it puts a little bit more pressure on you because you really want to make sure that you're telling the right stories about somebody. Things like that, when they happen in our newsroom, it's really fascinating sometimes to just stop and look, take a step back and watch people, what they're doing, how they're handling it. And it's always inspiring to see everyone sort of come together and, you know what? Yeah, I'll work this 15-hour day to make sure this gets done and it gets done the right way. I think our newsroom, again, having that family background, really comes together in big stories. And that's always inspiring to see.
Have you ever found yourself getting emotional on air that you've had to squash that?
I got caught crying on air once. There's my embarrassing moment. There it is.
Okay.
I was anchoring the weekend night news, and we aired a story. Dogs do it for me all the time. We aired a story about a guy who used to float in the water with his dog who had arthritis and was dying. This follow-up story was the fact that the dog finally was put down, and it was all about his final day with the dog. My producer had gotten in my ear and said, we're just going to fade to black out of this story. We're not going to come back to you on camera. We're just going to go right into the commercial.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, it's safe then to watch the story. Otherwise, I wouldn't have watched it. I would have looked away.
Right.
So I'm watching the story. I am literally bawling. It's such an emotional story. And our director got confused, and when the story was over, came back to me, and I'm like blowing my nose.
Meltdown on,
yes.
Oh,
completely melting down. Yeah. And I'm just like, we'll be right back. It was pretty bad. Yeah. Blowing my nose when she came back to me.
Bad.
Yeah.
What brings you joy?
A lot of things. My dog brings me joy.
All right, you got to ask, what kind of dog?
He's a Vizsla. Well,
I'm not
yeah,
familiar
most
with
people don't. I had never heard of that breed until we found him.
I'm going to have to go Google this later.
Don't worry, I have a picture. I'll show you. He's basically a redhead, and our fire alarm is going off right now.
Okay, I guess we need to pause and... Okay.
This is
Hang
weird.
on. We just got back from a fire drill. Does that ever happen on air? Have you ever had a fire drill on air?
Yes. And it was actually really funny. We had a fire alarm go off in the middle of our 11 o'clock newscast. We had just switched over where master control was sort of moving out of our space. So a company in Jacksonville, Florida was monitoring our newscast. No one was physically here. Pat Callahan is on the 11 o'clock newscast, and you can see the lights strobing behind him, and you can hear the alarm going off, and he finishes off his A block. We go to commercial, and the producer is like, okay, we really need to get out of the building. They put up like a NewsCenter will be right back slate is what we call it, basically on television.
And they never came back.
Well, no, they went outside, and Jacksonville saw the slate and said, oh, something went wrong. Let's punch them back up. So they put us back on air, and it was literally just a shot of our empty set with the lights going off in the background. And that was on air for, I want to say something like 10 minutes until they were allowed back in.
Okay.
But yeah, that was our air during the 11 o'clock newscast.
Okay. Wow.
So yes, it happens.
It does happen.
We roll with it here.
What charity organizations do you support or are you passionate about?
Well, I mentioned, I think, a few times my love for animals.
Yes, you did.
So really the refuge leagues are huge for me. You know, the humane shelters in Maine. I just think they're doing really incredible work, sometimes really sad work. That and the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital has always been a big one for me. Anytime I've ever done a story there, it's one of those weird feelings where you feel uplifted, but at the same time, you just like, you leave there and you just cry because you are like, these kids are facing some of the worst stuff ever. And they're just so brave and so strong. It's emotional.
What would your friends say about you? Or don't you want to know?
Yeah. I don't think I want to know. I don't want to know. No, hopefully they say that I'm loyal, that I make them laugh, that I am someone they feel like they can talk to. I would hope they say that. I don't know.
Who do you go to for advice?
I mean, I go to a lot of people.
I mean, you've talked about your folks. You go to your
My
folks.
mom always has the answers for things in my personal life. When it comes to stuff here, there are, I think there are certain people I go to for certain things. If it's a question about a story that I'm doing that has a political twist to it, it's either Callahan or Don Kerrigan.
Yep.
I go to them. There are things I go to Cindy Williams for. A lot of things I go to Rob Caldwell for. I go to certain producers for certain things. Again, I'm lucky to be in a place where these people have been here for so long. Sure. They know so much about the state and how things work, and they know how things work in Augusta, and they are just filled to the brim with information and experience and
historical
and
information and
Yes.
facts. And yes.
We take full advantage of that. Bill Green, you could ask him anything about Maine, and he
Yep.
literally will tell you the answer to anything. Yeah, he knows everything.
Do you have a favorite movie quote?
That's a really good question. You know what's funny is I work with a lot of weirdos, so myself included. So we often quote things. I don't know why, but we quote things from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Who doesn't quote things from Monty Python?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So that's not just a weird thing.
That's
Good.
not out of the ordinary.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we quote that movie a lot.
Music. What kind of music do you like?
I like it all, which is weird to say. That's also why you see a lot of different genres on 207, I think, because Rob is the same way. We're sort of just open to
That's great.
whatever.
Yeah.
Although there have been misses. We fully admit that. We have a joke about in this week's edition of What the Heck is on 207 right now. Because that's our biggest complaint from people is the music. Like, what
Really?
is this? Well, music's one of those things. People have
Very
a certain
subjective.
genre.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're a huge country fan, you're probably going to hate the fact that we just had this death metal band on, or, vice versa. You're going to hate that blues band that came in.
Right.
Yeah. It is very subjective.
I never thought about that, but I guess you're right.
So we try to be open.
So moving on into more philosophical questions.
Oh, man.
Oh, it's not that bad. So what are the most important lessons that you've learned in life?
I think just the most important thing is to listen. Really pay attention to what other people are saying and what they're doing. And I think that covers a pretty wide range of things in life. I mean, you can, especially now in the world of political divisiveness, it's so easy to just speak and not actually listen. And that's one of the biggest things that we have forced ourselves to do as journalists is just shut up and listen to what other people are saying. I mean, everybody has a different background and everyone is coming at things in a different way. Right. And so if you can better understand where they're coming from, you can better understand the story as a whole. That's
like
a great thing.
People wait for you to stop talking so they can talk.
Right.
Right. So, yeah.
That's also, it is complicated to do, too, in our world as journalists, because now doing the podcasts, it's you're always sort of thinking about the next question to try to keep the conversation going. And so it's hard to, sometimes I will find myself when I'm interviewing somebody, I'll be so focused on what I want to ask them next that I make them repeat themselves on something. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I guess I wasn't listening as well as I should have. But that's why you're recording. That's right. So you can go back and listen.
Edit and listen. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What lessons have you learned from your relationships?
I think just, again, that everyone has a different background. I think we all have good things that have happened in our lives and bad things that have happened in our lives. And I think we all learn something from those experiences, and we all learn differently, and we go in different directions based on how we react to those. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, just keeping an open mind on someone else's experiences in life and trying to understand where they're coming from.
Do you feel that you're fulfilling your calling?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know that I ever really look at it like that. I kind of came into this business thinking, well, I'll just do this until it's not fun anymore, and then I'll figure out the next thing. Uh-huh. As long as I, at the end of the day, go home feeling like I accomplished something or that I still enjoy what I'm doing, and I do, then it's still my job. I guess.
So let me come at it from a different direction. What do you feel your purpose is in life?
Man, what is the meaning of life?
Another great Monty Python.
I think my purpose, at least in this career, is to give voice to the people who don't have one or who are too quiet, who are too drowned out by the other stuff. Yep. Yeah, and I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy meeting new people and learning more about them and helping to tell their story.
What are you proudest of it in your life?
I think, again, that I've been able to help make a difference in some lives. I don't think I've impacted a lot of lives, but I think through some of the stories we've been able to tell, I think we've been able to make a difference in some people's lives. And I think that's really, really rewarding at the end of the day to know that you helped someone. I mean, people don't always love us as journalists, but we're trying.
I think it's just the nature of the beast right now.
Right. You know. Not exactly the most loved career right now.
Well, and I was talking with Rob Caldwell a little earlier about the fact that local news stations, I think, this is my own opinion, not shared by all, local news stations have a tendency to suffer these days because of the larger stations that are slanted one way or the other. That's just my own opinion. But.
That happens a lot more lately. You know, you get somebody yelling out fake news, or, you know, somebody posting something on Facebook, or just like I had a guy the other day message me saying, "You're just like every other journalist. You're so biased." And I actually responded, "What's biased about a story about Brussels sprouts? Have you seen 207? And it turns out it was a story about just help the Red Cross.
Right.
I think you're right. Usually when you respond to somebody like that, they're like, well, you know, CNN had this story, or MSNBC had this story, and
or Fox News had this story.
Exactly. Yeah. And you do get lumped in with those larger news stations who are, to be fair, like constantly feeding that 24-hour news beast. And that is not a great cycle to be in. But I think, as far as we're concerned, on the local level, we're just trying to tell stories about Maine and about people. And
I think that's one of the things that personally I think makes 207 so popular, is because you do tell Maine stories. So much of the news in the newspaper is, you know, you look at the newspapers these days and 60% of the news is from outside of Maine. Mm-hmm. And there's not a whole lot locally. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a little bit, but not a lot. But 207 it's all local stuff. It
is harder. I mean, the business is changing, and, you know, you're expected to do more with fewer resources. And there are days for sure when, especially during vacation times and sick times, where you are still trying to fill a show and you don't have people turning content, or, you know, it is Maine. Sometimes there just really isn't news to tell. So you do have to fill your show with some of that national stuff.
What are your favorite type of segments to do on 207?
I think anything that gets me out of the building. Honestly, I love being in here, but and working with the people I work with, but it's so nice to just explore Maine. Yeah. So often while we're out on a story, we will find out about another story later on, because someone will be like, "Oh, have you heard about so-and-so?" Or you'll drive by something and be like, "Wait a minute, what's that?" Yeah, Maine's just really cool. Yeah. But I also like the beer segments. We talked about that off of this, obviously. Because Rob and I are both foodie, and
yeah, I know Rob is very much a foodie.
Yeah. So we enjoy anything that requires experimenting with
testing,
food. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Taste
Quality
testing.
Control.
Exactly.
And if this was to be our very last conversation, what words of wisdom would you want to pass on?
You know what's funny? Rob Caldwell always asks that question. Did you ask him that?
Oh, yeah.
What did he say?
You'll have to wait for the podcast.
Because every time he asks someone that, I'm like, I'm impressed when they answer. I don't like to think about the end of things.
Sure. Well, nobody does.
Right. So thanks for bringing it up. No. I don't know. I guess it would be, you know, what we talked about earlier. Just listen to the world around you and the people around you, and pay attention.
No, actually, Rob said, be good and work hard.
Aww.
Be a good person and work hard.
He is a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. See, I'm not a good person, so I can't answer.
That's all the questions that I have. But I do have a last list of questions. This
okay.
I call it the rapid fire.
Okay.
What is your favorite word?
I know this is supposed to be rapid, but my gosh.
It doesn't end up being rapid.
No.
I call it rapid fire, but it's never rapid.
Yeah, we do lightning rounds too, and it's never. Because you're putting people on the spot. Gosh, favorite word.
Well, you know, I did send the questions ahead of time.
I know, and I didn't exactly read all of them. I got distracted.
I can usually tell who did it.
I know. I do have a little bit of ADD. So when I'm in the midst of something, if I'm reading an email, I'm like, oh, what's this over here?
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. Can I say pass?
You can say
Can we
pass.
pass on to
Sure.
the next one? Okay.
Well,
Caldwell is my favorite word.
You can't pass on too many of these.
Okay.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
What sound do you love?
Birds in the spring.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's like summer is coming.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What sound do you hate?
The fire alarm that happened. Hate that sound.
Yeah, fire alarms. What is your favorite curse word? We bleep it out.
Okay. I think it's safe to say I use the F word a lot, which is shocking that I've never slipped on air. Knock on wood. I swear a lot in regular life.
What? I can't imagine you.
A lot.
But okay.
A lot.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Zookeeper. I really want to be a zookeeper.
You really do.
I do.
Have you seen the movie?
The one where they bought a zoo?
Yeah.
Nope. I have not.
I haven't either. But
Okay.
I was hoping you.
I thought you were going to tell me it was great.
No, I was hoping you could tell me about it.
Oh, no. No, you know, I love monkeys.
Really?
Yeah, it's so weird. It's on my bucket list to hold a monkey. Actually, I did check it off my bucket list. Last spring, I was in Mexico, and there was a tiny monkey.
A monkey in Mexico.
Yeah, and they were like, you could pay to get your picture taken holding this monkey. And I literally was like, take all of my money. Take it all. I don't care. I just want
I'll do it.
to see this monkey.
No,
Yeah.
you're not going to end up with like a monkey in your apartment or something like that.
No.
Okay.
No.
No.
No pets allowed.
No pets allowed. But you have a dog.
The dog lives with my ex, but we have shared custody.
You have shared custody.
Yeah. Yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
I would hate to be another hated profession. I would hate to be a police officer right now.
It's hard.
That would be tough. Yeah.
They
Don't envy them.
They do a lot. There's not a lot of respect there these days. And yeah.
Yeah.
And everything you do is under scrutiny.
Yeah. Body cameras all the time, and people just expect the worst out of you all the time.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you show up?
I would like to hear God say, well done. You did what you were supposed to do.
That's all the questions I have.
That's it?
Yes. Amanda.
Did I pass?
You passed with flying colors.
Despite not reading your questions ahead of
Despite
time.
not reading my questions.
Not being
I'm
prepared.
very disappointed by that.
Sorry.
Amanda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been
was
a real
fun.
treat for me.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We don't have sponsors. We promote local charities. This week's episode features the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital. Founded in 1995, it is Maine's only full-service children's hospital. It is large enough to provide all the advanced specialty services your child may need, but is still small enough to give personalized care to each child's and family's unique needs. Maine Medical Center is extremely proud to support Barbara Bush's legacy. To find out more information or to donate, please visit mainehealth.org/Barbara-Bush-Children's-Hospital. That's mainehealth.org/Barbara-Bush-Children's-Hospital.
Welcome home to me.
This podcast was created and edited by Scott Malevsky. Thanks to our guest this week, and a special thanks to Ellis Paul for the use of his song, Welcome Home to Maine. You can find his CDs, music, and touring schedule at ellispaul.com. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, and iTunes. For more content and bios, visit www.interviewswithme.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next time.